Sports Professor Rick Horrow into the $1.3 trillion business of sports, and you're on the record. I am preparing as we speak Fort Pierce on the way back home in Jupiter to try to deal with the anticipated, unfortunately catastrophic opportunity impacts of Hurricane Milton. We'll have to see the whole state crossing its fingers, but at this time we focus on the business of sports. It gets our mind off of certain things, it understands and gives us some perspective on what's important, but also we focus on some of the industry leaders. Today, fresh off of an interview that I did at the CCon conference in Vegas in July, CEO of Reebok, Todd Krinsky, having been appointed in September 2022 after more than 30 years with the company. He began in 1992 as an intern and has held various leadership roles, including SVP of Reebok's design group. He also was directly involved in Reebok's partnerships with athletes and celebrities. How about Allen Iverson, Jay-Z, Shaq? And how about the instrumentality of the growth of Reebok's classic business, which includes the Club C sneakers? He's been with and involved with the Authentic brand. He'll talk about that in the interview. Elvis, Prince, Muhammad Ali, keeping those memories alive. Harvard Business School Executive Education Program. He has been involved in the industry in many ways, and here is Todd Krinsky. Sports Professor Rick Horrow into the $1.3 trillion business of sports, and we talked about it with David Falk. 1.3, but a lot of it is relative to apparel, sneaker business, not just athletes wearing shoes, but creative, best in the business, brightest of the breed, people pushing the envelope and expanding the business even further. And guest to Todd Krinsky, CEO of Reebok. Thank you for being here.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks, Rick.
Appreciate it very much. So here's a guy who started his career at Reebok in '92 as an intern. So you probably know more about the retail sneaker business broadly defined than almost anybody alive.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I wish I started as an intern, but I started in the mailroom. I worked in the mailroom for over a year.
Oh, was the mailroom below the internship?
A little bit below.
And then they send you to the mailroom?
Yeah, exactly.
I got it.
Yeah,
Goodell did that too, right?
Yeah,
The NFL, you know that.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I've seen the evolution of this industry from the early days of being involved in doing the Allen Iverson deal with David, all the way through to what's happening today with the new generation of players. And the industry has changed so much over the last few years, and it's been amazing just to watch this thing flourish and a new generation of kids kind of get into this whole business. It's a crazy business, but it's a really rewarding business.
Well, you take over for a predecessor in 2022. Yeah. 30 years with the company, obviously you have some institutional knowledge, but the industry not turbulence, COVID, athlete empowerment, uncertainty, the navigation is really important, and now you've got Authentic Brands, you've got the whole network. What have you done the last couple of years?
Well, I mean, what's really interesting is, when Adidas owned Reebok for almost a decade, and it was a case study in kind of what didn't work. A competitor owning a competitor in a very competitive landscape is not a great model. And so we were kind of constricted in what we could do. They kind of took us out of sport and put us into this fitness space a little bit, and we had to undo a lot of the deals we had, a lot of the athletes we had. And so it was a really tough time. It was a tough time because we didn't really feel Reebok could be Reebok. Reebok has this great position in sports. And so a couple of years ago, finally, Adidas, sold Reebok to Authentic Brands Group, which has been the best thing that could happen to us. They're entrepreneurial, they're creative thinkers. They want Reebok back in sport. So what I've been doing over the last few years is building our credentials back into sport and building a strategy to get back into sport in a new, fresh way. And that's been spending a lot where I've been spending a lot of my time.
And frankly, Reebok has been the beneficiary of that, as you've empowered a lot of athletes and you've made them think outside the box. Yeah. What's your general sense of an athlete's responsibility? Let's forget the Barkley moniker of role model or not, but let's think even broader. You've given them platforms to do the right thing and do the creative thing. What's your sense of what they need to do in return?
I think the perfect deal, and I say this all the time, is the deal that before you even put pen to paper, you're sitting across the table from the athlete and saying, what do you want to get out of this? What motivates you? What are you trying to do? Okay, and then Reebok, what are you trying to do? Those are the magic. And sometimes that only represents about 20% of the deals that get done. The other ones just end up being transactional because the athlete just slowly moves away back into their lifestyle.
Will you do a transactional deal with someone you really don't want to do a deal with?
I don't think we have the luxury to do that these days. The consumer today is too savvy. You have to have the right storytelling. They're gonna, and I can tell you, right now you can see what athletes are working with, what brands and what ones aren't. The beauty of our deal with Allen Iverson, for example, is we let him be himself. We let him make mistakes. We celebrated the wins and the losses that he had, and he appreciated that from us. And that's why he has a lifetime deal. We've been together almost 30 years now. And it's because I think we are a brand that has that DNA of allowing people to be themselves and get up when you fall.
Well, it's interesting because Iverson's a good example. There are a lot of people who would say he's too high a risk of a guy who spends all this money developing a brand that's aligned with him. You obviously felt differently.
I felt Reebok has always been a challenger brand. That's the DNA of how it started.
Right.
Paul Fireman started selling shoes out of his trunk in the 80s, and all of a sudden in 91 they overtook Nike. Okay, so that's the story of Reebok. And I think it's this challenger mentality that really is a lot of synergies with Allen Iverson, who he is and where he came from. So a lot of stress, a lot of pain on me. I was working with him during those times. I would wake up in the morning and there'd be something that happened and I'd have to deal with it with the executives, but I felt like he was someone we should bet on, and we supported him through some of that stuff.
We can do this for an hour and a half, but we only got a couple more minutes.
Yeah.
NIL, women, obligation. You have a platform where you can actually kind of help make sense out of a very turbulent industry. It's hard to put the toothpaste back in the NIL tube, but people who have bigger seats at the table than others can make a difference. So where's NIL going?
I think it's something we're still figuring out, but I think that there's these young college athletes have great personalities. They're their own businesses now, and if you pick the right ones, that you can create great relationships pre them going into the league. Like Angel Reese is someone we did a deal with when she was at LSU. LSU's a Nike school, so we had to figure, okay, well, how can we market Angel? What can we do with her that's not kind of in the LSU arena? And it challenges you to be creative. It challenges you to think and story tell different. And I think we're celebrating now that she's gone from LSU into the league now and flourishing, and we still have her. So I think you got to pick your spots. I think it's still uncharted waters, and there's still a lot of things to figure out in terms of what you can and can't do. But I think it's interesting for the athletes and for us.
Wrong question. I'm going to ask you anyway. Where is the retail business broadly defined? Where is it in 5 years?
Retail in general, or you
both? Both. Everything. The world.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny when the whole internet craze, e-commerce really started. Everyone said retail would be dead in our industry.
Yeah.
And a lot of us were saying it'll never happen because there's still in our world the sneaker culture. There's still the kid that wants to go to the shoe wall at Foot Locker in New York and be with his friends and have the social environment of picking up the shoe and deciding what to wear. What's the story behind the shoe? So I think that there's ebbs and flows in our industry, but I think in general, like, this is a thriving business for sure.
Finally, CCon, this event, sports entertainment, innovation, big deal. Game changer. Post-COVID, this is where everybody goes to help define the business in the future. Agree?
Yeah, 100%. This is an amazing event. The sports business, I think, is in a renaissance period now with all the new opportunities. I think there's so many people here to learn. I'm even hoping I can learn from some people here this week, and I think it's an amazing time to have an event like this. There's a lot of power here, and then for me personally, I get to reunite with David Falk, who is someone that I did a watershed deal with in '96, and now we get to spend a stage together. So for me, this is a win-win, and I'm really excited for this.
David Falk is iconic, as are you. Thank you, my friend.
My
really
pleasure.
appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Sports Professor Rick Horrow, speak with you soon. Listen, you think footwear, you think Reebok, and maybe a couple others as we know, but you think of the industry leaders who have gotten them there through the faces and likenesses of transcendent personalities. That's Allen Iverson, Shaq, Todd Krinsky knows how to do it. Well, as we always do, let's talk about the most significant issues in the sports business over the last couple of weeks, 1 through 5. Number 1, Pete Rose dies at 83. I was lucky enough, as you remember, to have one of the last interviews he did at CCon, last one of the interviews he did anywhere done at CCon in July. And he is either known as a transcendental personality and one of the best ever in his position, or somebody who's always been in trouble. Probably a little bit of both. 24 seasons, passed Ty Cobb at 44 with 4,256 hits. How about his postseason record? 67 games, 301 plate appearances. He batted a mere .321, by the way, 86 hits and 5 home runs. He won the MVP award, Rookie of the Year laurels, 3 batting titles. So he clearly was one of the best ever. On the other hand, betting on all games otherwise or not clearly violates Rule 21 misconduct rule, admitted to betting as a player, permanent ineligibility since 1989, reapplied a few times, not significant, not successful, and repentant in the interview? Probably not. Has a sense of his own place in history? Absolutely. Willing to speak freely? Hear the interview. And the bottom line is that will he be known as the guy who was the best ever in his position? The person who left a couple of offers to bring his Hall of Fame career back into the mainstream, and or the guy that caused permanent injury in the 1970 All-Star game to Ray Fosse? A lot of people remember. I don't know which is the answer. I suspect it's up to each individual. That's going to be ultimately the legacy, long-term, short-term, maybe as well. Pete Rose, no matter what, he's going to be missed. Number 2, how about running on the field? Fans storming the field, SEC, Big Ten, other places. Well, clearly, Michigan upset by Washington, Minnesota's upsetting of USC. We got a couple of field charging incidents in that conference. But how about the SEC? First offense, $100,000. Second, $250,000. Others, $500,000. Well, Arkansas fined $250,000 for the second-time offender following what they did against number 4 Tennessee. But how about Vandy? Yeah, they're fined a number, which is $100,000. But they steal the goalposts, take the goalposts, run 2 miles down the street, throw it in the river, and they beat Alabama. And the dollars and fines go to the other schools and other programs. I'll bet you Alabama would have gladly foregone the $100,000 to make sure the upset didn't happen. And maybe Vandy likes the $100,000 considering the notoriety. Bottom line is there is a significant attempt to try not to encourage on-field, on-court storming. Remember, there was a big incident on court against Duke last year, caused an injury, and on and on and on. So we'll see how that plays out. That's number 2. Number 3, Major League Baseball playoffs start, and incredible games, incredible ratings. One of the big issues, by the way, is you look on the helmets and you see a company called Strauss. They're a German workwear brand, and they have become postseason economic darlings. The 2022 collective bargaining agreement allowed a carve-out, a 4-year deal now with this company running through 2027. Despite the outcry, a lot of purists are saying, who are these guys and why don't we know who they are and what are they doing on the top of a helmet? Well, visibility, close-up of the batter, they've gotten some significant exposure. They're also going to be in over 8,000 minor league baseball games annually, at least through next year. So Major League Baseball thinks about the purity of the sport, but they also think about the money involved as well. Number 3. Number 4, Terrell Pryor, you all remember him. He rushed for 2,164 yards and threw for over 6,000 in his career. His big time was in 2010. 2021, he applied for the possibility of NIL. He was excluded. He filed lawsuits over NIL dollars that he could have had. He sues Ohio State, the NCAA, the Big Ten, Learfield Communications by arguing that the money was available there as well. At the end of the day, however, he may or may not win. The damages in the $2.7 billion settlement only reach 2016 and beyond. It's not that Pryor is eligible. It may be a Pandora's box if he argues that everybody during that period is eligible as well. And at the end of the day, we're going to have to see what happens over time. Number 5, NHL. global expansion. And the bottom line of all of this is, as we look at the NHL start, Germany, Switzerland, UK among matchups in the future, reflecting priority in those markets, looking at Australia, looking at the Middle East, and at the end of the day, Amazon Web Services, SAP, and others will carry 46 matches during the time slots that will appeal to the international viewer. So Gary Bettman's done it, and will do it again. Those are the top 5. Let's look at the top 5 to look forward to over the next couple of weeks. Well, number 1 is what happens with Hurricane Milton. I'm here in Fort Pierce, ducking the storm, but also my obligations to make sure the house and property is taken care of. It's a full-time job, but we got to focus on the top 5 issues previously and the top 5 issues looking forward. And here are the top 5 looking forward, and it only happened in Miami. So Ohtani does his 50-50, and after a scrum for the historic ball, Chris Belansky emerged with it, put it up for auction with Golden Auctioneers a few days actually later. Joseph Davidoff filed a suit in Florida's 11th Circuit against Belansky, arguing that he and his friend Kevin Ramirez and 18-year-old Max Matus, Davidoff seeking possession of the ball, an injunction to stop the auction, and more than $50,000 in damages. Why? Well, Matus also filed a suit against Belansky, claiming they had possession of the ball simultaneously, but they lost it by having their arm pinned. Matus' suit specifically naming Belansky for trapping his arm between his legs, while Davidoff's suit says an unknown fan did hit him, only in Miami, only in America. Highest bid for the ball at $1.8 million. Auction set to close October 22. The ball cannot formally be sold until after a hearing scheduled for October 10, stemming from Matos' suit in Miami-Dade County Court. I can't wait for the facts on this one. By the way, Barry Bonds' 73rd home run, 2001, 700th career dinger, went from the bleachers to the court. The $450,000 paid for his 73rd home run ball was ultimately split between 2 owners. The case to go to court when the home run new ball ownership happens. This happens all the time. Can't wait for the facts. It'll be an interesting lawsuit resolution as it's done. Number 1. Number 2, FIFA's multi-billion-dollar transfer market may be at risk after a court ruling. The clubs committed to spending nearly $6.5 billion on acquiring new players, but a major court ruling announced Friday could significantly change that lucrative process. Many long-standing transfer rules that govern moves between teams across the globe have been declared contrary to the European Union. And the bottom line is the court took issue with rules requiring clubs to be compensated if they deem a player has terminated the contract for just cause. For example, when a team and a player decide to transfer. FIFA and the Players Union released separate statements indicated they wanted to analyze the ruling in depth before commenting further. FIFA, by the way, importantly announced new regulations for next summer's revamped Club World Cup in the U.S. It'll make it easier for impending free agents to join and play for a new team at the tournament. Many player contracts are set to expire June 30, 2025, but the Club World Cup begins June 15, set to be played in 12 NFL and MLS stadiums across the country. If players wish, they'll be able to sign with a new club between June 1 and 10 of next year. That's number 2. See what happens in the future. Number 3, the NFL looking at international games, maybe in the regular season. Abu Dhabi, potentially. They've also visited sites in the last year, including Dublin, Rome, Barcelona, Paris, and the Australian cities of Sydney and Melbourne. Hosting game in Abu Dhabi, some significant logistical challenges, a 12-hour flight, 14 to return, 8-hour time difference, longest flight, biggest time difference at all, clearly a bye week after, but it is a major league leap from what we currently have. That's number 3. Number 4, the Savannah Bananas. Like, let's say, the Harlem Globetrotters of baseball, they unveiled an 8-month, 111-game world tour for 2025. Includes playing in football stadiums for the first time. The team has slotted dates with 2 NFL facilities, Nissan's stadium in Nashville with the Titans, and Panthers Bank of America stadiums. The contest joined by 2 games each at 18 major league ballparks, rising dramatically from 6 playing last year. 1 million fans have watched them in the last year. By the way, more than the MLBAs did viewed live last year, as we know. Waiting list of about 3 million, including 1 million that joined in a 24-hour period this week. The Bananas live streamed the draft of its 2025 schedule, drawing more than 150,000 views. They've got it going on, and they say they know they can play in the smaller stadiums. Now the step up, and the step up includes Nissan, it includes Carolinas, and then we're going to step up even more, I predict. And then finally, number 5, NASCAR and its new expansion. I remember working with the NASCAR folks when we were doing tracks all over the country, Chicago, Kansas City, LA, and Bill France, Jr. and Sr. talked about the older demographic and preserving it. Well, how about this? The rocket racing map of NASCAR is a historic one because of Fortnite. Talladega had maps and laps according to history. The time warp stands out. First lap, early 1800s. Second lap showed how Talladega went from Anniston Air Force Base to its racetrack. Lap 3 restored Talladega to its 1969 state, and the 4th lap focused on the 1990s and the renovations and improvements, and then today. By the way, a significant opportunity for esports, for Talladega, and for the demographics of NASCAR. The top 10 winners of this go to the Daytona 500 that expands it even more. Well, those are the 5 coming, along with the 5 that happened, along with Todd Krinsky, the CEO of Reebok. I'd like to thank Callie Kazare for putting this together with me. I'd like to thank CCon for hosting the conference that Todd was interviewed at, and others. I'd like to thank you all for listening and watching. And next week, join us once again. You're on the record. Sports Professor Rick Horrow. Speak with you soon.